And you were an athlete while you were.
Hello. Hello, everyone. See which view I like better. I guess we'll start with this. Hello, hello, hello. Come on in. Welcome to the final Honors College Star Lecture of the year. The Executive Director of K through 12 Outreach at EMU, Dr. Bia Hamed, will discuss her research regarding the journey of women in STEM, and she has organized an EMU alumni panel made up of remarkable women who will tell us about their own personal journeys in STEM. But before we begin, we'll have some quick housekeeping. If your name on the Zoom is not your actual name, or if you're viewing with someone else, please send me your name in the chat so I can record your attendance. The purpose of the Star Lecture series is to introduce you to inspiring research and creative work produced by faculty and alumni here and beyond. Each year, the Star Lecture is organized around a theme. This year, the theme is the journey. We started with the idea that each of you is on your own academic and life journey. Then each of the Star Lectures has explored this theme in some way. This semester, we learned about the civil rights journey in the US from Dr. Barbara Patrick. Before that, we accompanied the Formosa Quartet on a musical journey throughout time in the US. Tonight, we'll hear from Dr. Bia Hamed, who's researching the journey of women in STEM to identify better ways to create space for minority female students in STEM programs and explore how their cultural background affects their success. She's developed programs to attract and retain first-generation college students. Dr. Hamed directs several successful programs to increase the representation of women in STEM fields, including EMU's dual enrollment program, off-campus courses, non-credit programming, high school campus visits, domestic travel courses, and popular youth summer camps such as Digital Divas, Digital Dudes, and Manufacturing Day. And these are also opportunities for volunteer credit to everyone out there. She organized the panel tonight of EMU alumni who will discuss their experiences as women currently working in aerospace, automotive, software engineering, etc. So I will hand it over to Dr. Hamed.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for attending. I see we have a rich audience, over 50 people here today, not including our panelists. So that's great. Hopefully we'll give you some good information that you guys can reflect on. So as Dr. Moore said, I've been doing a lot of research over the years on women in STEM in general. And people ask me, why STEM and not STEAM? Well, it's STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, that where women are underrepresented and underpaid, and it's all about making space for women. In the arts, we rule. And you guys know that, right? Actress and acting and painting and theatrical experiences. Women are, not maybe where they should be, but they are thriving. It's in math where globally there's only 3% of women studying math, or engineering, where here in the States, we only find that maybe 20% of all engineering degrees go to women. And of that, only maybe 3 or 4% go to women of color. So we're struggling in a lot of areas. And I did a dissertation on this, and I studied underrepresented women in STEM, actually engineering, and to find out, how did these women get through their program and actually finish with an engineering degree when very few women do get an engineering degree. And as it turned out, the common theme was their parents were behind them. Maybe community was not, maybe community members did not support the work their passion as children to be an engineer, but their parents hung tight and their parents were supportive and gave them the encouragement they needed. And that's what helped them succeed. There were things in their youth that sparked their interest in engineering, being exposed to something or liking something, or as a baby, being able to take things apart, all drove them into that direction. And luckily, they were in environments where they were able to they were encouraged to go down that path. And today, like everyone that I interviewed for my research was a successful engineer. There were struggles in the classroom, struggles in the community and families, but it all fell back to the parents. If you have a structure where you have somebody at home, and maybe it's not your parents, maybe you're in a married adult trying to do something in STEM or a non-traditional kind of career. If you have a support system behind you, you're probably going to be more successful than not. So this work fascinates me, and actually just a little background. I've been doing this since 2003. I started off at Henry Ford Community College. Now they call it Henry Ford College. And we used to call careers for women, not STEM, but non-traditional. So up until maybe 8 years ago, STEM really caught on and we started using the acronym, but non-traditional careers for women were women in computing, we used to call it, or women in technology, or women in the trades. Those were non-traditional. For men, the non-traditional career would be a man in nursing, or even a man in teaching. So yeah, so I want to thank you all for coming today, and I hope you can walk away as a woman feeling empowered, or as a man wanting to help women succeed. So I'm really grateful to the women who showed up today. They were invited to help share their stories of how they became women of STEM. And they're either, or all of the above, alumni of EMU, or people who have been passionate about the Digital Diva program over the years, that they've contributed, donating their time and their energy to give back and to support that next generation of girls. So just so you know, Digital Divas, a lot of you actually have volunteered in November for Digital Divas and Digital Dudes, and you came in and you signed up and you helped out in sessions, which, by the way, April 5th is another Digital Divas and April 19th is a Digital Dude. So we need volunteers. So if you're interested, I'll get that information to you so you could sign up. But just a little background with Digital Divas and Digital Dudes, we support underfunded schools, minority students in the K-12 system who don't have direct access to college or don't have strong STEM programs in their community. So what we do is we try to get them on campus and do programs as much as possible to build pipelines to higher education and to STEM careers. Because, you might think, well, why is this woman talking about STEM all the time? Because that's where the jobs are going, right? That's where the good pay can be found. In 10 years from now, 90% of the jobs are going to have that technology component, and the other 10 are going to be the not so desirable jobs, right? Like maybe it's the dishwasher or the busboy or the things that don't pay as well. So our focus is to try to get first generation college students, minorities into the STEM. We need them in the STEM field because they bring a sense of diversity into the end result of whatever is being created. And that's what it's all about, right? We want products and things in society that fit everybody, not just a certain population. So here today, I want to start introducing my panelists. I'm going to start with the newest person I know and then end it with the person I know the longest. So I have Christine here, and Christine is from Domino's, and she has this huge job responsibility, but I shortened it to Global Product Engineer. So the way I know Christine is she's part of the women's group at Domino's, and her group volunteers for Digital Divas, and they also create STEM kits for kids, which is STEM kits that go out all summer long through the Ypsilanti Library to the kids in Ypsilanti and the Lincoln school system. And they've been doing that for years, and I'm so grateful. And they also supply endless pizza to any of my programs. So thank you, Domino's. Christine, would you like to say hello?
Hello. So I am the solution architecture manager, and we're the people who tell the developers exactly how to implement a feature in software. That's kind of like the level my husband would understand of what I do. So
We have smart techie people on this.
yeah, well,
Sure they get it.
beginner one. Yeah.
I don't, but I'm sure they do. Okay, the next person up is Morgan, and Morgan is a recent, fairly recent alum from EMU. She was actually in the computer science program. Some of you might even like remember her, and she also was a student athlete here at EMU. She was on the track team. She volunteered for a podcast I did, and she's just amazing, and I just see her like going places. She has so much like she has potential to do anything. So today she lives on the West Coast. She's out in San Francisco, and she's a software engineer for VMware. Why don't you say hello, Morgan?
Hey, y'all. Like you said, I graduated in 2022, women's track and field. I double majored in math and science. I participated in Women in Computer Science, where most, if anyone recognizes me, that's probably where I'm from.
Thank you so much. So math and science, it wasn't computer science, your major.
It was, so I double majored in math and computer science.
Oh, okay, got you. Math part, wow, that's awesome. Next up, I have Katie, and Katie is also an alum of EMU. She actually has her degree in orthotics and prosthetics, and she's a longtime volunteer of the Digital Diva program. So orthotics and prosthetics, you guys know what that is, right? Like they make artificial limbs for, yeah. So when she would come in to help with Digital Diva, she'd bring in like cases and stuff, artificial limbs, so the kids can like play with them and see what they're about. And she'd bring in a scan, and she'd bring in like all this stuff and fill up a room where kids would really be able to like get to know what orthotics and prosthetics is. So today she's actually a clinical manager with NovaCare, and she covers Michigan and Ohio. So she has a lot of territory she's in charge of. Why don't you say hello, Katie?
Hi guys, thanks for getting on. Like Bia said, I graduated from Eastern actually 2 times. I graduated in 2013 with my bachelor's in exercise science, and I played on the softball team once upon a time when they still had that there. And then in 2015 with my master's in O&P, and after completing my residencies and getting board certified, I've been working as a clinician in the field in both O&P since 2015. And I'm also the regional manager, like Bia said, for Michigan and Ohio for NovaCare.
Thank you. And I have Delane here. Delane is, has been a longtime friend and longtime volunteer of everything. Like we would call up Delane and say, hey, can you talk at this? Or can you, and she would come in with her jumpsuit and a smile and just thrill everybody with her words. Delane is actually a pilot. She's an alum of EMU's aviation program, and she actually flies for UPS. So Delane, say hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Bia. It's a pleasure to be here and see you again. I love it when Eastern calls me and has me do all these events. It's a lot of fun for me. I've flown corporate. I've flown for the passenger airlines, and I landed at UPS. I decided flying cargo was my favorite. I love the airplanes that they have at UPS, and I love the routes. I do the international routes. So we go around the world, stay for a couple days in a country and explore it and then move on. So it's a very exciting job for me. I also fly in air shows. I started that career about 18 years ago, and that career has been a lot of fun. It's given me the opportunity to meet so many different people at air shows, all different ages, from all around the world. And everybody is an aviation enthusiast that goes to the air shows. So that's a lot of fun for me. And then a couple years ago, I was asked to be on the an air show team that was the first ever all-female warbird team. And warbirds are World War II aircraft. And so I was a captain on that for a couple years. So that was a very exciting time in my career.
That's awesome. So volunteer is like strictly volunteer, no pay. It's just about the thrill of the experience, correct?
Yes.
That's awesome. That's
Yes.
awesome. So I'm sure you're going to get a lot of questions about being a woman in aviation because there's so few women pilots in aviation. What's the percentage these days?
You know, it was interesting when I first entered the industry, 25 years ago, it was at 6%.
Mhm.
And that was all pilots, private pilots, commercial pilots, airline pilots. And they say now for airline pilots, it's still 6%. But the amount of private pilots and women that do it, as a hobby and have their private license, that number has creeped up, I think, to like 7 or 8%.
Mm.
So it fluctuates a little bit, but it kind of seems to always hover around 6%. But I do see more women in the field working as professionals.
Yeah, if you guys didn't know, EMU has an aviation management program, which is thriving. And if you're not the type that doesn't have the stomach for flying, aviation management is still a great way to get into aviation and keeping your feet on the ground. And Delane has a great story about her first flight. I'm hoping she'll share that.
Do you want me to wait until we talk
Yeah,
about?
yeah. It'll come
Okay,
up.
I'll wait.
Lastly, I have Paulette here, and Paulette has been a Digital Diva volunteer since the beginning. I really appreciate, she puts her heart and soul into the volunteering. During COVID, we did STEM Kits for Kids, and her and a coworker actually designed a workbook for kids to do at home while they're stuck at home. I'm so grateful for all her support over the years. Paulette is a program manager for Ford and has worked for multiple companies here in Michigan, a few companies that are global. So she has some really great STEM experience. Paulette, why don't you say hello?
Hello. I love to tinker, and I always bring tinkering things to Digital Divas. So I haven't been able to convince a lot of people at Ford to join me yet, but I have not given up yet. The biggest hit in the 10 years that I've been doing Digital Divas was Tweet Your Teddy. So we figured out how to use Arduino boards and set up a Twitter account back when Twitter was still called Twitter. So just bringing the internet and the capability of communicating through different medium is where my sweet spot lies. So it's nice to meet all of you on Zoom. I love seeing everybody's different backgrounds. So
Great. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming, students and panelists. At the end of the day, everyone's tired, but we're going to try to keep this exciting and give you some good information. So let's continue the theme and continue the talk about journeys. So a lot of times who we are as adults ties back to what we were as children and what we did as children. So I'm going to ask my panelists, as a child, was there something that you did, a hobby or something that you really liked that tied into your career aspirations and your STEM identity today? So we could start with Paulette, because Paulette, you said you'd like to tinker. Was that something you did as a child?
yeah, as a young person, I was always tinkering and playing with make-believe things. As a middle-aged or middle person, like 8 to 12, I was able to take apart radios and fix them and electrical things and tape them together and get them to work. And then I grew up in my high school years were in the 80s, so we had the cheapest, ugliest computers from the beginning. We called it the Trash 80, and we actually were able to take those apart and put them back together. So when I got to the point of being able to select what I would end up doing, I didn't really know. I was like undecided math and science for the longest time because I really just was looking at, I just like taking things apart and putting them back together. But in order to get paid to do that, you have to figure out what the science is behind it and how the logic, even if you don't become a mathematician, how the logic works to solve problems. And I'm still doing that today. So
Great.
it's been really fun. I now get to work in what they call Ford Labs, which, think of it like a mad scientist lab. We are literally testing brand new software before it gets used in product. So we build things really rapidly and quickly using AI, using the latest technologies, putting it in front of crowds of people just like this through other types of blinded studies to be able to capture sentiment. And will people even use this? Is this game interesting? Will you be motivated to make a purchase through this direction of information and how we communicate? And it's moving more and more into the AI and the technology around how do we consume all the data that's out there and then give it to people in small little bits. So it's really exciting.
Thanks for sharing. How about any other panelists? Christine?
Well, I grew up loving to make things. The problem was we got our first computer in 1978. My dad was a programmer at Ford, and he was really too enthusiastic with it, right? So I swore I would never go into IT, but I must have been absorbing something over the years and changed my major a million times. I did go to Eastern for a while. I was an interior design major at Eastern. So I really did a 180 there. And ended up working in a software development department as an administrative assistant, got bored and started reading the books and taught myself how to program, and then finished the degree and got a master's and did all that. But I think I assumed it wasn't creative growing up. And that is it is absolutely creative. I think my favorite thing about programming is there's always a hierarchy of correct answers. And I love exploring which one is the most elegant solve, right? Because unlike I think what most people experience in school, where there's one right answer, there's always multiple to choose from. And I enjoy
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was also very creative. I was kind of a mix of Paulette and Christine. I was really good at taking things apart, but putting them back together was usually not my strong suit. Fortunately, I grew up with two older brothers, who were 7 and 9 years older than me. And my oldest brother, he's actually a mechanical engineer at a nuclear power plant. So he's far more brainy than I am. Thankfully I could take the things apart and he could put them back together for me majority of the time. Unless I broke it with no reason, and then he would just say, sorry, you're on your own and it's broken. So I always like to tinker with things, but being that they were 7 and 9 years older than me, they were obviously driving far before I was, and driving comes with its own set of excitement, tinkering on the cars, trying to figure out how to weld. My brother taught himself how to weld, and then he taught me how to weld, and he was very, very self-taught, very, very smart. He has that engineering brain, and a lot of that I think rubbed off on me. I became very mechanically minded because I was small enough to fit underneath the car easily and efficiently. So I became like, hey, I need this, go get it. And I'd go and I'd figure out, I learned what tool would do what job. And I was kind of their little gopher. But a lot of what I did growing up, I was just always one of the boys. They always had their friends around, and I was just always doing that kind of stuff. So a lot of it was interesting reading some of the questions and things for this afternoon, because I never really thought about it as being a male dominated or male driven career pathway that I would end up in. It was just kind of my norm because that's what I was surrounded with all the time. So that's what I got used to. And that was the easiest route for me. It was natural.
That's interesting. Do you guys get the theme? Are you getting the theme here? How about you, Morgan? Does that spark anything with you?
I grew up playing sports. I really did. I grew up playing sports. I think my my first interest came from my mom loved watching like NCIS and Law and Order and those kind of shows. And I think NCIS is the one where there was always like a hacker who like got on the computer and figured out some information super fast. And I just loved watching that character do stuff. And then in middle school, we had an opportunity to participate in a STEM class where we got to explore software engineering and writing code and learning very low level about that. So I don't think I had some interest, but most of my influence came from teachers and opportunities at school.
All right. Just a quick question, Morgan. Was that NCIS character a woman?
No, they were not.
Okay.
I wish I could give a different answer.
All right, because that's one of my gripes is our pop culture doesn't support women in STEM roles enough. And I would have been so happy if you said, yes, it was a woman and it was a woman of color. No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
How about you, Delane?
I asked my dad this question, and when I saw it in your list of questions, and he said that ever since I was probably 3 or 4 years old, I would point to the sky every time a plane went overhead. And when I was little, the big airline in Detroit was Northwest Airlines, and they had these bright red painted tails. And he said I used to just lay in the backyard and watch them come over. And then as I got older, I started asking him to take me to the airport. And we would go to the airport, and that was when you used to be able to get beyond security without being a passenger. And we would just go sit there. And he's kind of like, what are we doing? And I'm like, I just like to be here. I just like to see the planes taking off and landing, and the people from different countries. And so I did have a very supportive family. They were nervous. Nobody in my family flies or is a pilot, and so they were nervous for safety. I think what they didn't know probably scared them. My dad did tell me he was a little nervous for me to enter a field of all men, but he told me this when I was in college. So when I entered college, I didn't realize that there weren't many female pilots. I just kind of went in not knowing. And then when I sat down in class and realized that I was the only one in class that was a female that wanted to be a pilot, it kind of struck me as odd. I didn't understand. And then I quickly realized that I was definitely a minority in the industry.
So what you're talking about leads us to our next question about someone in your life who took the time to talk to you or to guide you or encourage you in the non-traditional career paths. So Delane, your dad was perfect. He did the perfect thing to support you. You know, think of our lives today. Who has time to go sit at the airport and watch planes? I mean, that was so good of him. That was like, this is a busy man. He's supporting his family. You have to pay so much for parking. So he truly did support you. That's wonderful. How about the other panelists? Was there someone in your life that really gave selflessly to support you in your passion? And I'm not going to pick on you guys. If you have something to share, share it.
I mentioned before, it was my teachers. So when I was in high school, I did track and field, and one of my coaches, she was my high jump coach, and she was also the AP computer science teacher. And, you know, the teachers could see all your grades, and she knew that I exceeded in math and science, and she was really persistent about getting me in her computer science class. She, like, when it came time to register for classes, she reminded me. When it was around the AP test time, she's like, hey, are you gonna take my class? And she's really persistent about it. And I was nervous mainly because it was an AP class and I just had never considered to take an AP class. And at one point I was like, let's just go for it. And I ended up loving her class. Like, I would do this homework over any other homework, writing code. And it was also super cool because coming out of that class, I actually knew a lot of the 100 and 200 level information for computer science. So it really was, I'll say, that teacher for me. And also both of my parents studied accounting in college. So they were kind of computer people, more on the math part of the STEM. So me going into computer science, I don't think it was super daunting for them to like support me in it because it was kind of similar to what they did. So
Okay, that's great. So it was a high school teacher who really encouraged you to keep on the track of computer science. That's great. And it helps when your parents are professionals, you know, they just know, you know, they just know. So Christine, I saw you took your mic off, you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so I was an adult by the time I made this decision to go into software development, but my coworkers were so incredibly nice and answered all of my questions. I mean, even though I was in my 20s at the time, I think I don't know, was like the annoying neighborhood kid, right, who's following people around. But if it wasn't for them, there's no way I would be here now. So even though I did have the support at home, it wasn't exactly the same.
So we have dad, we have high school teacher, we have coworkers who are really nice. Anyone else want to share anything?
So I want to just talk about mentors that's outside of your family. Bea mentioned how many different jobs I've had. So I've had quite a few everywhere from journalism to nonprofits to big giant corporations like GE Healthcare and Pfizer and now at Ford. And what has really served me well is to have that sounding board to mix ideas off of and say, hey, what do you think of this? Like this, this is just gonna show up blurry, but it's just like a poster, right? What do you think of these? These are my ideas, but do you think they would work? Where would we start? How would we test it? And that in and of itself is so valuable as you're looking. It's not just a single point in time. Oh, in 5th grade, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I'm pushing 60 now, and there's been at least 10 of those influencers that helped direct my traffic and my trajectory from one career to another. And so that's where if you're in the middle of something right now and you're like, I don't have it all figured out, and I don't have an internship set up for this summer, and I don't know what's going to happen or where I'm going to be placed, or try not to worry about it. It's going to be okay. There aren't very many people who are still working their first job. You'll have multiple jobs throughout your career, and how you handle yourself and make connections with those supporters in your life, they'll wear different faces every single time. And so that's my encouragement to you, is don't try to write a formula and repeat the formula, because life moves on and it's always different.
That's interesting, Paula. It makes me think about like technology and how fast it moves and how we have to keep moving along with it and reinventing ourselves to keep going, so we could be employable, right? Like this whole AI thing, it's like I need to wrap my head around it because it sounds like that's the next big thing. Yeah. Don't give us Ford secrets, but no.
No, I mean, it's not Ford. I mean, it's out there. Have you ever answered a telephone and they said press 1 for
Yeah.
English, press 2 for Spanish? That's an AI.
Is it? Okay, I never thought
Yeah,
about
it's
that.
just an old AI, but it's basically a learning bot that records an action that you feed it, that it then collects that data and reacts in a specific way. It sends you your phone call to the next path.
I said
That's
I was
the math part of it. It's just logic, right? It's if this, then do this, then do that.
Mhm.
And somebody still had to program it. So even though we're using AI now, there's still a human behind it telling the AI what topic to consider, what information to parse. Even if you guys use AI to write stories and papers right now, you still have to tell it what the topic is, where your credentials are going to come from, what are your sources, and then it can parse it.
But nobody on this call does that. No one uses that chat, whatever it's called.
A GPT. Well, they should be able to. Is that against this college?
Yeah, I think so. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it's like unethical, kind of like someone writing your papers for you kind of thing.
Oh, I don't know. If it's against Eastern, I'm sorry.
Well, it's
I
so
have 2
new.
collegiate, I have a senior and a sophomore, and they use it to write. So maybe it's independent of which professor you have.
I think it's just so new that we haven't like wrapped our minds around it and really did policy to get behind it. So it's like the Wild West right now when it comes to AI and writing papers. So yeah. How about you, Katie? You have any like people in your life when you were little that
Mine-
helped?
It wasn't necessarily anybody specific. My family was always very supportive of everything. My dad didn't have a formal college degree and he worked in a factory for 40 plus years. So he always wanted all of his kids to be able to get a degree in something and move forward. I had a lot of support from teachers in high school. I took a lot of the same AP classes and those kinds of things, and they were all very helpful. I can't really think of any one specific person. You know, as I mentioned earlier, my brothers always included me with everything that they were doing, and that's where I kind of learned a lot of the hands-on stuff. But I can't think of any one specific time or one specific memory or one specific person that was like, you know, the person that steered me
Right.
in any
right.
different direction. They were all just very supportive of what I wanted to do.
It's really interesting, and I think people don't understand how lucky they are when you can say, my parent told me, you know, I want you to go to college, or you should go to college, or yes, you better go to college. I had the total opposite. Like, my parents did not want me to go to college. And it was not like an expectation. It wasn't put out there. Like, it was not even a discussion growing up for me. So when I hear people say, "Oh yeah, my parents, you know, yeah, they said I have to go," or "I'm just going because my mom told me I had," you know, I'm like, you're so lucky, you know, when you live on the other flip side, it's something. Katie, I'm just interested. What city did you grow up in? I love the story about your brothers and fixing the car and teaching themselves how to weld. That's
I
awesome.
grew up in Carlton, which is down in Monroe County. So when Delane mentioned all the airplanes that flew over, my parents' house is right in the flight path of DTW for everything. My kids actually do the same thing. They say, "Oh, airplane." This one, my assistant here on the call, she loves to go to grandma and grandpa's house. Airplane, 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 airplane. A lot of the Delta flights are very brightly colored. But yeah, we were down in Carlton, so very kind of rural area. But if you guys are familiar with where the DTW is at, kind of down in that general area.
Nice, nice. So you had the backyard space to weld and fix cars, that's
Yep.
for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really love that story. So let's move on to the next, and let's talk about the college years. So can you relate like your major and were you like the minority in the classroom? Were you guys like minority, like the only woman or one of a few women in the classroom, outnumbered by men? Delane, you can start us off here because you said it. You were the only woman in the classroom, and tell us how it felt like with guys, like, you know, were you uncomfortable or what?
I grew up with brothers, so I was not uncomfortable. I think I was surprised. There were two other women in the aviation management program, but they weren't going to be flyers. One was going to be an accident investigator, and the other one, I think she wanted to get into more of the management side, like dispatching. So the three of us quickly bonded because we were the only females in a lot of our classes. And then my classes that I was the only female in for flying, I guess the initial reaction, you know, I'm looking around the room all the time, hoping that there's another female in there so we can bond a little bit. When I was hired at the passenger airlines, I went to Southwest first, and there were two other women in my class of 50, my new hire class of 50. And then when I went to UPS, I was the only one in a class of 50. And I remember going in the first day, sitting down, hoping that another woman would walk in, because I had to be in training for 8 weeks. And I thought, really need another woman in here to bond with and talk to and everything. But you know, in the college years at Eastern, I always felt supported by the men in the room. We had all different, I was a member of Alpha Eta Rho, the aviation fraternity. So you had people that wanted to be flyers, you had people that wanted to be in scheduling, you had people that wanted to be in management, and the FAA, all sorts of things. And I always felt part of the group. I always felt supported. And some of my male friends would ask questions, you know, how does it feel that you're always the only female, you know, in this class? And I said, I guess I just kind of got used to it. And then it stopped being a big deal because it was one of those things, it was going to be like that probably for my whole career.
Hmm.
I should accept it now.
Yeah, and I think in your field, it's unique because, I mean, as sexist as this is gonna sound, it's like women are, the head of the household and how do you leave kids, how do you leave your kids for, if you're gonna fly to the other side of the world, and who's gonna watch your kids, and, we have ties, and being a wife or a mom of kids, it's like you really have to have that support system at home to do what you do, and you really do.
I do. I have a great support system at home, and I was also very careful about which places I went to work at. As I got into the industry, you start to learn the airlines to work for that are family friendly, for both the mom and the dad. And as soon as I started learning that, I knew the places that I wanted to work, and that was what I would pursue.
So, Katie, how about you? How's the O&P program? Is it fairly women in the program, or is it?
It has changed pretty significantly. When I was in undergrad in 2013, that was my first exposure to the field of O&P specifically. And at that time, it was predominantly men. My program at Eastern was more women than I would say maybe 60 or 70% women to men. But we all got along really, really well. We were all there for the same reason. You're studying the same thing, and you develop friendships with people. And I guess there was always a little bit of the sense of competitive nature. Everybody wants to score higher on tests or what have you. But everybody was really supportive. It wasn't, you're a dumb girl or anything like that. My first experience out of school in my residency. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry for the intrusions here.
No, she's cute. It's okay.
I can only keep them at bay for so long. My residency, I was the only woman in the prosthetic department at the VA. And being that it was a Veteran Affairs hospital that I worked at, it was predominantly male patients that I was seeing too. And that came with its own challenges at times. A lot of especially the above the knee amputees, the sockets and the prosthesis themselves go up pretty intimately into the butt and the groin area. And I had some patients that were not as comfortable working with a female, and that's fine. That's something that we offer in my offices specifically now, is that we do have male and female staff, which is nice. Some females prefer to work with females and vice versa. I know school-wise, it was not quite as much. And the field of O&P has been more and more and more women are getting involved with it. I still keep in touch. We do clinical rotations for the students at Eastern. And I want to say the cohorts, the current 2 right now, I think are almost all women, like 90 to 95% women. So it's changing significantly. One of my favorite memories from my prosthetic residency was I kind of won over the hearts of one of my patients who was a grumpy older gentleman. And when everything had come full circle and I'd fit him with his prosthesis, for a girl, you're really not that dumb.
Wow.
Thank you. That's, that was the highest compliment. But it traditionally, years and years ago, it was all males in the field, and things have changed pretty considerably with exposure to women in STEM. And there are a lot more women getting into the field now, which is a nice thing to see. It's fun to kind of see it come full circle and go from something that was predominantly men to having a pretty good mix of men and women in the field.
That's awesome. It's nice to see that transformation. Thanks for
Definitely.
sharing that. That's so important to take note of. Morgan, I need to know computer science and math. How are your college classrooms?
I think I talked about this before too with you. I was always one of a couple women in the classroom, which was nice, but I also this was also followed up with being a Black woman as well. I grew up in Georgia, so being the only Black kid in the class, I was pretty used to by the time I got to college. And then in college, I was one of very few women and then one of very few Black women in a classroom. I don't think I had any negative experiences, but I also was a student athlete. So when I went to class to do my work and then I left. I didn't socialize very much in class. Women in computer science, I got to socialize a little bit more, but obviously like the whole point of being there is to have that community. So I never felt any negative things there, but I really was like getting my work done and getting out of there. Um,
So let's let's go down this rabbit hole. So you being a woman of color in these classrooms, and sometimes being the only woman of color, like, do you have any advice to pass on to any students out there that are grappling with that uncomfortable feeling of being different in the classroom, or like you feel like, yeah, tell us how you would deal with these feelings.
um, my dad is an educator, and education was extremely important, I know, for my mom as well. We are here to learn. We're all here to learn. We're all taking this class because we do not have this information. Um, I really would say, like, focus on the learning part as much as you can. Embrace the teachers who embrace and respect you. And if you do have any negative experiences, find the safe spaces for you, whether that's Women in Computer Science or all the activities that BIA has. There are so many organizations on campus, I'm sure. And not to mention, Eastern has resources for more problematic issues. But for the most part, like when you get in the classroom, focus on the learning part, because that's really ultimately what we're here to do. And then when you find that friend or that peer or that teacher, because I'll say I had one teacher who, I can't think of their name right now. She teaches the HTML, the web development class, who always kept me in mind. I was able to TA for her multiple times. Like when you find those people, stick with them. But yeah, like just focus on what you can control and find the safe spaces for you.
I love that. That's excellent advice. And I think that goes for anybody who feels like they're the odd person out. I mean, it's not only about color, it's about age, it's about sex, it's about so many different things where this world, everyone's so hypersensitive to fitting in, not fitting in. So that's great advice, is to focus at the task at hand and not the social aspect of it. Thank you, Morgan. That was great. Christine.
Well, I wanted to put a plug in. At work, we have groups just like that, and I am part of the Women in Tech group, but I'm on the leadership committee of the disabled group. So, and if it wasn't for them, oh, I don't know what I'd do, because as a force, facilities are a really big deal, right? If you have mobility issues and that sort of thing. But just like I'm sure you have those resources in school, definitely find those resources in the workplace, because it makes a huge difference. On a different subject, I wanted to ask you, have you ever looked at culture in the rural, culture as it affects women in tech? Because my experience has been, I'm not the only woman, I'm the only American raised woman. Other countries are apparently doing this wonderfully, where there is not this stigma of women going into tech. Vietnam, Nigeria, China. I have tons of female coworkers from those countries. I don't have female coworkers from America, though, which I think is interesting. I don't know what sort of marketing they have going on, but they're doing a great job.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny you said that, because in my research, I found, like, in the Middle East and these countries like Egypt and the Emirates, women, there's no, like, women are outpacing men with engineering degrees. Like, what are we doing wrong? So thank you for sharing that. Paulette, tell me about, you and I have a lot in common. Tell me about that college experience of yours.
So I also grew up with brothers, so it really took me a long time to realize that I was the only woman. I just kind of did my thing. But I do remember a couple of times, just being more mindful of my surroundings. So I went to Michigan State in the late 80s, and there was we still had all of our computers were still in a computer room, right? So you still had to walk across campus to a computer room. And I can remember one day doing some Java code that I couldn't actually, or not Java, Fortran, that I couldn't actually get to compile. And then so it was, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, college students, that's not an unusual time. But it didn't dawn on me until I was halfway back to my dorm and I could hear other footsteps that I maybe wasn't in a safe place, right? And so then you just dip in to some place where there's a crowd. And I developed this uncanny ability of just like blending into crowds. So whether that's a coping mechanism that's admirable or not, it just was reality for me, is I just blended in so much that during my careers rising up in both Pfizer and at GE, I dressed like a man, I talked like a man, I asserted myself in man speak and mansplaining. And it was only until I found a great group, like you had mentioned, what we call an employee resource group of other women, that I realized I had really given up maybe 15 years of femininity that I could have embraced. And so my charge to all of you is, as we as a human race become more and more in tune to the diversity that is our quilt, be yourself. Don't just try to blend in. Don't just try to read the one book written by one guy that got so many millions of dollars and follow his method, right, to be able to climb the ladder, the corporate ladder, because it's not going to work anymore. One path is not the way. And so that's why I'm really proud to say that I'm a member of the Ford Women's Network, and also my direct supervisor is a woman. Her direct supervisor is a woman, so 1/1. The LL3, so 3 levels up, is also a woman. I am starting to see the value of having compassionate, empathetic, feminine, embracing leaders in the corporate world. They just look at problems differently.
Mhm.
They solve challenges from a different perspective. It's less push through and more gather around and let's solve together. And for me, this is the best time of my life. I'm loving the idea of being able to draw in instead of pushing through. So for sometimes there's an old analogy of, you can run the race, you can run it fast, or you can run it well. And sometimes when you run it fast, you're the first person or the only person who finishes. And now I feel like my goal is to run the race well, so that when we finish as a team, and everybody is there and everybody's voice has been heard and everybody's perspective is understood and at least listened to. It may you can't, especially in software, you can't deploy for everybody. But there are tools that you don't have to deploy for one voice. We know for sure that when you deploy a product for just one person, it breaks for everybody else. So you
Mhm.
can use some data to be able to create something that is best for most. And you can then build the business back to the accounting aspect. You could build the business value of, say, well, we can spend 3 months to develop that feature that one guy will use once a month because he wants a dashboard. Boring. Or we can build blah, 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 and then show him the data and watch the room light up. And so that's where I'm so glad that I've been able to maneuver through those days where I was the only woman. And the days that I did leave my kids behind, and the days that I was in different countries where being a woman was not respected, and the days where it wasn't really cool to say that you were an engineer. And now I can say all of those things. So I would just say, if you're having a hard time right now, reach out to a friend, because finding ways to persevere to get to the other side, the sweet side, is worth it. It doesn't always have to take a lifetime.
Paulette, you gave such rich advice. Like, so many times you said something, and I'm like, oh, drop the mic moment, drop the mic moment. Thank you so much. That was so, that I hope you guys are taking notes, because Paulette hit on so many things that are so true and can make your life easier. And on that note, I want to make sure we have enough Q&A time. I just want to wrap it up by everyone giving us some words of advice to these college students. Like, reflect on yourself, and what would you have told your younger self? Who wants to start?
I'll start, because Paulette said something that really touched home for me. I felt like when she was talking about femininity, there was a time when I first got into the field and started flying airplanes for a living. And I remember thinking, am I supposed to dress like a boy? Like, should I chop my hair, take out my earrings? Do I still get my nails done? Like, I felt like there was this, I'm not sure how to fit in. I'm not sure what to do. And I started reading, and I cannot emphasize enough about mentors and reading about other people. And the women that flew in World War II, they were called the WASP. They were my inspiration. There was one woman in particular, and I read her book. She loved clothes, nails, makeup, lipstick, and she was known for packing the airplane. So she flew a P-51 Mustang, which is a single pilot fighter back in World War II. She was known when she went on a trip for taking her high heels and finding places in the tail that were little compartments that she could put her stuff in there, and her makeup bag. They told her you can't wear makeup, and she said, I'm wearing makeup. Too bad. And she would find a place for her makeup bag, and she was one of the best pilots that was in the ferrying squadrons. She flew multiple aircraft and had an amazing record. And once I read about her, it helped me decide that I'm going to be who I want to be. And that was it. From that moment going forward, I felt much more comfortable with being who I was, if I wanted to wear makeup in the cockpit. And that was probably one of my deciding moments. She was a great mentor, even though she wasn't alive and she was only in a book. So she was pretty amazing to me to make that decision going forward.
I love that. I love that. hopefully, you were young enough that, you know, you got to get a lot of makeup time in your life in the cockpit.
Yeah. Yeah, my other advice too was mentors, mentors, mentors. I
Yeah.
can't stress enough about them. I've had so many mentors in the air show world that if you open your ears and you listen to them, my mentor, he's now 86 years old. He's had 32 engine failures in his
Oh.
career. And I sit down at breakfast with him still, and I write his stories. Well, what did you do? What was it like? What did it feel like? What sounds did you hear? So I've had a few mentors like that in my flying career that have just been so wonderful for me to have,
Mhm.
and have made me a better pilot also.
We could do a whole different Zoom just on mentors alone. So Megan, put us on for next year. We'll do.
You got it.
Christine, you want to go next?
Sure. I think someone said something earlier about not rushing things and really finding what your non-negotiables are, right? And so it's a big wide world out there, and what you end up doing is this little tiny sliver of work, and it would really stink if you didn't enjoy it. So takes time to really know yourself and know what you want to deal with, but also the things you absolutely cannot stand.
Mhm.
And it certainly took me a long, long time to figure that out, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, that's so true. That's really good advice. Morgan?
Oh, there was a question for Katie in the chat.
Yeah, we'll get to questions. as soon
I
as
was
we
just
have them.
typing. Do you want me to wait and then we
Yeah,
can
you
do
can
that in a little
answer
bit?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're giving our last, like, our advice to our
Yep.
younger
Oh,
self.
I'm sorry. I didn't understand. Okay.
Yeah.
No
Once
worries,
we're
yeah.
done, then yeah. Morgan?
I would just say, go hard for your goals. When I was in college and my parents and my aunts and my siblings, when they all said it goes by fast, it's over. And I'm really feeling it now. I was just up there for track. They had an event a little while ago, and it goes by fast. It goes by fast and it's over, and there's no experience like being in college. So whatever goals you have that you want to do while you're in college or that you want to do right after college, go hard for them and enjoy college. The same way you have like some non-negotiables when you get out of college, like do the fun things, join the clubs, go to the events, make the friends, but also like, do what you want to do. And if you want to go for a job, you want to apply for an internship, apply and let them reject you. If you get rejected, don't just always just go for it. That's all.
I like that. And it's true, college is just like that. And once it's over, you're like, wait a minute, I should have tried harder, or I could have went harder, or I could have went higher, or yeah, it's true. This is the transformational part of your life where you can really, set a good foundation. All right, Katie.
Sorry, I keep trying to turn myself off. I don't want to detract from everybody else that's speaking. I go kind of right along with what Morgan said, is just try your best with everything that you do. Try your best and definitely take advantage of the time that you have, because like she said, it does go incredibly quickly. And before you blink, those years are over. So just give it your best, because you never know, if, like she said, if there's a job or there's an internship that you really want to go after, but you're not sure, go after it anyway. Because what's the worst that can happen is you don't get it, or somebody says no, but what if somebody says yes? Right? Growing up an athlete as well, they always say you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And if you don't take a shot at something, then you never know what might have been. You know, I might not have gotten into the field that I got into. I'm glad that I did. Healthcare has its own challenges, like every other field. Everybody's got their own sets of challenges. But you just have to kind of keep pushing through, because what we do does matter. And, you know, it sounds like a lot of us had a lot of really good support from our male counterparts and those kinds of things. I can't agree more with the mentor piece. Just finding somebody that can kind of take you under your wing, and then paying it forward and taking other people under your wing. You know, like getting involved with the things that BIA is hosting with the Digital Divas and Dudes. It's a great, great opportunity. At the end of the day, I never know if I am going to get the blank stares and people think what I do is just creepy and crazy and not for them. That's fine, because they learned that that's not something that they want to get involved with, you know. But for some kids, I might find one kid in each session that really, like, their eyes light up and they, you know, they get the, you know, the jitters or whatever the excitement is that I used to feel. It's really rewarding. So it's kind of a full circle piece to not only find a mentor that can help you out, but to also mentor other people. But yeah, everybody I think made really, really great points. I think I'm just repeating them at this point.
Well, now it's Q&A time, and actually, Katie, you have the first question. So it's from
Nice.
Brooke, and Brooke is
Ew.
currently an exercise science student.
Awesome.
Just like you, wants to go into
Yep.
OMP, and she wants to know what your favorite and least favorite parts of your job are.
That is a tricky question. I'm going to start with my favorite part, because that's the hands down one, is getting people up and standing and walking for the first time. I do both orthotics and prosthetics. So orthotics are the braces that can help people anything head to toe, which is certainly is helpful. But my passion is really the prosthetic side of things. I was always really interested. As a kid, my mom would, like, you know, smack me and tell me not to stare at people, but it wasn't like an ew thing. It was an, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So for me, getting people up and taking their first steps, I get butterflies in my stomach every single time. I've had people, you know, people's families that cheer and jump and burst into tears. And it's really rewarding to be able to help people get back on their own 2 feet, literally and figuratively. So that 100% is my favorite part of it. Just seeing the sheer willpower that some people have to be able to defy the odds and get back up and moving around again. My least favorite part, it's something that you don't necessarily learn a lot about in school, whether it be undergrad or grad school, but we're facing in healthcare a lot of challenges with insurances. I would say my least favorite part is having to get reined in by the insurance companies. But when I say that, I'm not saying, you know, putting the running blades on the 90-year-old grandmas, nothing like that, but just getting denied by insurance companies for things because they just don't think it's necessary. I don't think that walking is a luxury. You know, it's not something that we should have to fight tooth and nail with a lot of these insurance companies with. I would say that's one of my biggest frustrations, is just knowing that somebody really, really needs something to get back to life, but they can't have it because somebody somewhere just doesn't think that it's necessary. To just a very, very brief example of that, I had a patient a few years ago that I worked with who he got very ill with meningitis. And he ended up losing both arms and both legs. And his insurance company denied prosthetic treatment for him because he did not have the ability to transfer or stand or walk independently. And my company, I fought tooth and nail with the insurance company. I wrote letters, I got testimonials from people. And when it was time for me to have the peer-to-peer appeal review with the physician, the physician on the case was an OBGYN, which nothing against OBs. I think they're wonderful. But this individual had no knowledge of prosthetics, had no knowledge of anything. And I asked point blank, I'm sometimes too blunt about things, which I guess ties back quickly is, you know, have a filter sometimes is a great piece of advice. But I just asked the doctor, I said, you know, how this person doesn't have arms or legs. How do you expect them to be able to stand with no legs? That's the point. We're trying to make them legs so that they can stand or walk or transfer or do those things. So I would say it's those frustrations that are the big ones that are my least favorite part of the field. That gentleman actually, his insurance company did deny him prosthetic care and he ended up passing away a few years later, I found out, and he was only maybe 35 or so. So that's definitely the big part that really drives everybody crazy. Myself, my other colleagues, that we rant and we rave about the insurance companies. Because they make some rules that really aren't great for their patients. They have their beneficiaries in mind, so they say, until it comes time to put their money where their mouth is, and then they decide, we just don't really feel like paying for that stuff.
Yeah. So that I can totally relate to that. Like living with these orthotics myself. Like is important. Like getting new wheelchairs. Like I usually walk with crutches, so I don't use a wheelchair a lot. So they're like, "Oh, you don't need it," and like,
Yeah,
like,
it's really unfair that there's
sometimes.
somebody somewhere that can determine if it's important or not for you without knowing you and what your situation is. That's really
Yeah.
crappy.
There are a couple other questions. I want to thank all the panelists for doing such a great job. Max, did you have something else that you wanted to add here? Or there are two other questions in the chat. So I will go ahead and read the questions if that works for everybody. Zoe Rice asked, have any of you experienced imposter syndrome? And if you did, how did you combat those feelings? Does anybody want to take that?
Do you mean by imposter syndrome, like I don't belong here?
Mhm,
type
exactly.
Yeah,
thing?
exactly.
Okay.
I'll start, a few of us mentioned employee resource groups. So when I got to VMware last summer, they talked to us about the employee resource groups, women at VMware, Black at VMware, and I immediately tried to get involved with both of those. The people it's a tech company and it's a STEM company, so Black people at these companies it's a small community of us, and the people in that organization, they like got ahead of it because they already knew it was coming. It's my first big girl job, and they uplifted me when I had ideas. They empowered me. And I was so surprised. One time I came up with an idea and I was like, hey, what do you guys think? And they're like, yeah, just let us know what you need help with. And I was like, you're like, that's all, just like, let you know what I want to do next. So, as far as combating it, and all the other ladies have mentioned their coworkers, their friends, other employee resource groups, their families, like finding your community is so important. Like those are the people who are going to help lift you up because they've probably already been where you have been. They've already felt those things, thought those thoughts, and they can tell you how they got through it. And really, I think imposter syndrome is just about it's all in your head because you got the job. They hired you I know the program I got into was nationwide. It was very competitive. Out of thousands of people, they chose me. They could have chosen someone else. You already got in the door, and those people around you are just going to help remind you of that you got here, you can do it, and don't let those little voices in your head try to confuse you about that.
Okay, I told you all that Morgan was great. All right, so she really is. So, and I want you all to believe that, and I want you to live by that, what Morgan just said. But I guess I'm from a different generation, and imposter syndrome is real, and I still suffer from it today. And, back in the day, we used to go to the bathroom and cry, but now the way I handle imposter syndrome is, yes, I agree with everything. I go into the bathroom and Google it, right? You fake it till you make it. That's what I learned. Fake it till you make it. But yeah, even today, I'm like, I have so much education. I have PhD. I'm a director. I work at Eastern Michigan University, and I'm still not 100% confident. I could fake it, but I'm still not 100%. And this may be, you know, someone who's older and lived through a few things that's speaking, but I want to be on Morgan's side. I love what she just said. So I need to hang out with you more, Morgan.
Absolutely. There was another comment kind of following up on what Katie was talking about before by Isabella Moses. Hi, Katie. I want to be a medical lawyer to fight insurance companies that do things like this. What kind of law support do you think could help rein in the insurance companies in your field?
Well, first of all, there needs to be more people like you that want to fight those kinds of things. That's a really good question. I don't have a lot of knowledge on the lawyer side of things. We don't delve too far into the legal pieces with what we do, aside from just going back and forth with the insurance companies. But with my experiences, we've never gotten to a point. Sorry, I got another assistant joining here. Where it's actually gotten to a legal battle. A lot of the times with the insurance companies specifically, it's handled more at a state level. So like the Michigan Medicaid, that's one of the insurances that we struggle most with our patients. Because there are a lot of people that just don't have a whole lot of funding for their healthcare, and they fall under that Medicaid umbrella for their healthcare. So it's more at a state level, and there are groups, I can never remember the acronyms, but there are groups. I think the American Orthotic and Prosthetic Association does a policy forum actually in the DC area, where they go and they lobby with folks at the state, I want to say state representative, and then the Senate, or I'm sorry, my government is failing me at the moment. But they do lobby and they try to get the policies and things changed. And there hasn't necessarily been a lot of movement on that. So I wish I had a better answer to your question, Isabella. I'm sorry. It's more of an advocacy thing, I think, at this point. And it's really just getting out there and expressing to the policymakers that having a prosthesis, being able to walk, being able to exercise, being able to do those kinds of things, it's not a luxury, it's just a basic human right. So I hope that answers. I'm sorry, it's not a grandiose answer, and I wish I had something a bit more direct. But I think that's an awesome thing to get into, and our field would love to have great people like you representing us to help with the patients.
Are there any other questions for any of the panelists? If you want to write it in, go for it. And if not, I want to thank the panelists, Katie, Paulette, Delane, Morgan, Christine. Thank you so much.
There's one
Is there
more
a question?
question. Mark raised his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go
I had
ahead.
a question. I had a question for Paulette. So like I recently got a Arduino kit, and you mentioned that you were kind of like fiddling around with them. I mean, I've kind of gotten to the point where like I'm doing really easy projects, but like where would you recommend to go to like learn more about like Arduino and like coding like that?
I'll type it in the chat.
Okay, thanks.
Like a good coder, I'm gonna go to the internet, grab the short URL and paste it into the chat so you have the right place.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have anything specific to Arduino, but Free Code Camp is amazing. They have so many resources, and it's 100% free.
So I have some microbits. Is that the same? You guys know microbits? That we give out to kids? No, okay, that's an Arduino thing. So, okay, never mind.
Well, Dr. Hamed, I want to thank you for organizing this. All of the panelists shared with us some really heartfelt advice. Your experience is helping us now follow in your footsteps. There are so many students who are inspired here today, and if it would be possible, maybe they could, we could communicate. If they have more questions, they can email me and I will reach out to you and try to get those questions answered. But thank you so much. So this is the final star lecture. Oh yeah, don't forget, we'll send out some invitations for community service to help out with the Digital Divas and Digital Dudes. So they do need volunteers, and you said it was April 5th and April 19th.
Yes, thank you
Yes.
so much.
So we'll send out a call for volunteers through Tuesday Times. But thank you to everyone for coming here today. This is the last Star Lecture of the year. So you now will do a reflection paper about 3 of the Star Lectures, and you will submit that to the EMU Honors at emish.org or emish.edu. We don't know what the Star Lecture theme will be just yet. It's maybe going to be around mental health, but we'll keep thinking of ideas. Maybe we will come up with another panelist presentation for next year and reach out to Dr. Hamed again. But this was great. Thank you, everyone. And if you need to email me because your name wasn't on there, please feel free to email me. I'm at Dr. Moore, MMOORE86 at emish.edu, or you can just email the EMU honors at emish.edu. Thank you very much. And Morgan's happy to meet on LinkedIn. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
So when will the past 2 lectures be sent to us by email?
If you email me, I'll send you the links.
Okay, could you
If you did
send
attend,
me-
did you attend those?
I attended all the ones that were this semester, yeah.
Okay, yeah, email me and I'll send you the link. I've been working on transcripts, but yeah.
What was your email again?
Just send it to the EMU honors.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, thank you.
thanks, Katie.
Thanks to all the panelists. Thanks, Morgan.
Thank
Really
you.
great.
Yeah, it was
Have a
great.
good night.
So inspiring.
Good night, y'all.
Good night. Have a good one. Thank you. Any other questions?
I think so. I think we can just log out.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bia, if she's still there.